And the Spike Week gang is back on the clock in a DraftKings $555 best ball tournament, $1 million to first place. And we are heading into the 9th round, building out a superstar squad that we're all very excited about, getting into the middle area of the draft. And we're extremely flexible. We're extremely flexible with an elite quarterback, an anchor running back, elite tight end. Now things are going to start to get interesting. Things are going to start to get interesting in the middle rounds, figuring out where to build out this team. We know we need running backs, but we're really wide open. And this is our sweet spot of the draft. We're going to figure out what we're doing in rounds 9 and 10 of this $555 best ball draft. Let's do it. All right, guys, back on the clock, air quotes, back on the clock in the 9th round of a $555 Millie Maker DraftKings best ball draft. Super quick housekeeping before we get into our debate, discussion, strategy around rounds 9 and 10. I will read off the players we have drafted through 8 rounds. If you have not seen all the videos up until this point, we're trying to record a video for approximately every 2 picks of this draft that we make. So you'll get maybe about 10 different picks. And in the description on this video, you can find the link to all of the videos through 8 rounds. So far, we have drafted out of the 108. God bless. I mean, every time I say it out loud, it makes me happier that we started with Tyreek Hill out of the 108, but our total team, Justin Fields at quarterback, who fell more than a round past ADP. Breece Hall at the end at the 308. So the end of the 3rd round, we scoop the new 23 mile per hour man, Breece Hall, as our anchor running back. We took Garrett Wilson to go with Tyreek Hill as our 2 lead wide receivers. Our biggest debate thus far was in the 6th round what to do, and we took Kadarius Toney. We decided to go ahead and let's swing for the fences with potential breakout Chiefs wide receiver in the 6th round, Kadarius Toney. And then in the last video we just recorded, 7th and 8th rounds, we took Darren Waller. Things just fell really perfectly for us with Darren Waller as an elite tight end, and then Jahan Dotson to continue to build out a really strong wide receiver room through 8 rounds. Really quickly, I'm going to read off who's available here because I think the first pick that we made, and to be clear, we have made this pick already, and then we're going to discuss maybe a little bit more in depth our second pick here in the 10th round at this turn, because I think the first one ended up being a little bit straightforward. If you did not watch the last video, really quickly, we took Jahan Dotson in the 8th round, and when he was available, there was a group of wide receivers and maybe one particular quarterback that we were all pretty interested in, and kind of said Dotson isn't going to fall back to us in the 9th round, but maybe the DeAndre Hopkins signing pushes Treylon Burks back. Maybe the fact that there's 3 Ravens wide receivers here and they all go a little bit later in ADP, maybe one of them get back to us. Maybe Elijah Moore gets back to us, right? Maybe someone like that gets back, but we don't think Dotson is going to. So we decided to push like pretty much all those guys. All the wide receivers went. So our hopes and dreams of getting a crazy faller in that wide receiver group did not happen, right? They all go off the board. But one quarterback falls, and he happens to make a lot of sense for our team. Tua Tagovailoa, who has an ADP of just before pick 85, falls all the way back to us here at pick 104. So pretty hefty fall there from old Tua, closing in on 2 rounds, falling for Tua. At the other positions on the board, Samaje Perine, Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, AJ Dillon, Zach Charbonnet, Devin Achane. Those are the kind of best running backs by ADP available to us. At wide receiver, Zay Jones, Tyler Boyd. I shouldn't have made that face when I said Zay Jones. Emily leading the witness. If you like Zay Jones, I apologize. I won't make the disgusting face when I talk about him in the future. Zay Jones, Tyler Boyd, Romeo Dobbs, Rondale Moore, Sky Moore, Juju, right? So kind of a not so pretty group of wide receivers. And at tight end, David Njoku, Pat Freiermuth, Dalton Schultz, Dalton Kincaid, Greg Dulcich, etc. At quarterback, like I mentioned Tua, but also Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones available to us there. So this is another one. We've spent very little time ending up discussing these picks once we've gotten on the clock, but this is another one where a lot of us felt pretty similarly about Tua being the best pick, but we'll go down to Silas and around really quickly. Was there anything else you were considering here outside of Tua?
Yeah, so I really wanted Javonte here. Unfortunately, he goes 2 picks before us. So I was kind of pressing the table, pounding it for Javonte because I think he has, absolute significant upside in a Sean Payton offense. After that, I felt the running back tiers flat, right? Like we like enough of these guys. Like I like Gibson, I like Charbonnet, I like Dillon, I like Herbert, I like A-Chain. I can even get behind Brian Robinson. Not really big on P. Ryan because I'm huge on Javonte. But he's kind of in that same tier where he has a bunch of contingent upside. So I kind of felt like it wasn't worth us to, push our luck to get Tua to fall even further. Like, might as well just take it, be done at quarterback, and pair him with our literal first round pick. If Tyreek goes off and Tua's healthy, Tua's going off. Like there's no doubt about it in my mind.
Trev.
I was saying here, I was a little scared of the Javonte and Brees, double ACLs. Silas sold me really quick. So I was like, all right, well, I love the price, so I'm all in anyways. But obviously he went and, yeah, Tua falling, we got the Tyreek faller. It just made way too much sense. And people like treat Tua as like more of a floor quarterback, it seems like, with where he goes in the draft. And he had a stretch of games. He was just putting up like 300 yards and multiple touchdowns every week, it seemed like, until he got another concussion, which, is a worry. But in that scheme with those weapons, it's like, and on Draftkings where you have the 300-yard bonus, it's like, come on now. Like, it just absolute smash. And we're just going to be getting elite quarterback production every week between him and Fields, it seems like. Really
quickly on Tua, just while I'm thinking about it, because I will definitely forget. I posted this on Twitter a few weeks ago, but if we just look at the overall quarterback one performances, right? So in the fantasy football season, so excluding week 18, excluding the playoffs, only one player did it 3 times. It was Joe Burrow, and 4 players did it twice. Lamar in 9 games, 10 games or something, which is kind of fucking insane. One was against the Dolphins, by the way, which I'll get to in just a second. Fields did it twice, Hurts did it twice, and Josh Allen did it twice. Tua did it once. And the other little extra caveat to that is Tua was the QB2 in that week, but Lamar was the QB1. They both scored 40. So Tua was the QB2 scoring 41 fantasy points. So I think in terms of ceiling, I know he doesn't seem like that mega ceiling type guy. He seems more like a Kirk Cousins or something like that, but he really isn't. He's what we've been hoping for a San Francisco quarterback to become for all of these years. Like, you have these weapons, put up some damn big fantasy points. And so I think he's very much a no pun intended spike week player, even though he isn't viewed as that. B. Kurt, what were you thinking here?
So a couple things. I don't know how this draft could go any better. Like, if we just sat down and let's pick guys we want in each round and hope we get half of them, these might be the guys we had picked from this draft slot. So it's amazing that we're getting all of them. I sometimes end up with 2 as my QB1 in a 2 QB build. So the fact that we're getting an awesome value and he's our second quarterback, basically in my eyes, he's an elite quarterback. It just is stretched out because there's a little bit more risk. So I'm amazed with that. But also there's an important lesson out here for folks. We're taking ADP values that fit our team. People like to talk about the value hound. Shout out Pete. It's a great bit. But this is a scenario where these just picks make sense with construction, make sense with players already on the team. So it's good. We're not just sitting here being tethered dogs to ADP. Oh man, Kirk Cousins is 13 picks past ADP and doesn't make sense. We got to take them. No, we're actually making good picks and getting ADP values. So it's just no-brainer after no-brainer. I'm excited to see where we actually go from here because I think there's going to be a lot more debate. If we had to debate Javonte and Tua, I think I was over to Javonte.
Yeah, that would have been tough. I think I mentioned this on the last video. We've almost gotten bailed out in terms of having to have hard conversations because I agree. Javonte versus Tua would have been very tough. For me, I actually don't even know what I would have ultimately landed on. I'm sure, like in many of our other videos, I would have ended up swayed. Like somehow Silas swayed me to take Devonta Smith at the 202 or whatever in a recent video. But even though he didn't believe it, like I don't know what's happening in the Bulldog. Two quick things. What you said about the ADP and making sure that it fits, not making sure, but it also fitting your structure and your correlations and all that is like. People should re-listen to that constantly. Go over and over. Like the importance of ADP value is not so much greater than every other factor that you need to weigh when you are on the clock. ADP value is great. We understand that ADP value in a vacuum is good because why? Like the why is the important part, right? It is giving you some form of a unique roster, generally speaking, right? If everyone else has Tua in the 8th round and we get him in the 10th or whatever, 7th round versus 9th round, that's helpful because you have a different combination of players than they have, and you also have a higher projected combination of players, right? And so if you are taking the ADP value and you're not getting the uniqueness or you're not getting a higher, right? This is why like people will preach uniqueness with like a 16th round pick. And it's like, I understand the point, but what you're really arguing is like a 1v1 of Paris Campbell versus Tutu Atwell or whatever. And it's like, that's not real. It doesn't really matter. It actually doesn't really matter in terms of your win equity. But you also have to then fit it in, like you said, to your structure, right? Did you already draft 2 quarterbacks and Kirk Cousins is, I don't give a shit if he's 30 picks past ADP. Like you can't afford it. It hurts your team, even though you're getting the ADP value. And the opposite is not the opposite. The additional thing you mentioned, we're getting Tua way past ADP. He fits as our QB2 at this price with Justin Fields, especially in 20 rounds on DraftKings. And he's stacked with Tyreek Hill, right? If you don't have Justin Jefferson or you don't have TJ Hawkinson or you don't have Addison and Kirk Cousins falls past ADP like Tua just did here, I still wouldn't take him. Because it's like, what good is Kirk Cousins and you have to force yourself to take KJ Osborne later? Like, you're not really winning anything with that, right? The ADP value doesn't make up for the losses in other areas. So it's always this delicate balancing act when it comes to ADP value, right? Correlation, team structure, all that kind of stuff. And so I couldn't have said it better. On a less serious note, had we taken Javonte, the injury concern people would have been out with pitchforks for this team. Tyreek Hill, known
won't
coming up.
Won't they still be with Tua? Tua doesn't have a brain.
I know that's what I was, but that's what I was going to get to adding on to that. Tyreek Hill, known hammy guy, right? He runs so damn fast. Every other week in Kansas City, he's coming up lame with his hamstring. Breece Hall literally just tore his ACL. We haven't seen Justin Fields necessarily get hurt yet, but the guy ran for 1,000 yards last year. Like running quarterbacks get hurt, right? Kadarius Toney put together with pixie sticks and rubber bands. If we had taken Javonte, another a blown out knee. Darren Waller hasn't exactly been a picture of health of late. God forbid we got Javonte and Tua like at this turn. People would have been like, dude, your whole team is going to be in the hospital by the time the fantasy playoffs get around here. What are you guys doing? But I also think it goes to show you how much sometimes those guys can fall. I'm not saying that any of those guys fell necessarily because of injury risk, but I do think you can get discounts on injury players. And we don't need all 10 of these guys, 20 of these guys to hit. We just need a handful of them to stay healthy. And this is a total smash team. So we take Tua in the 9th round. I think it was pretty easy, pretty much of a slam dunk, particularly with Javonte not there. So then this is when it starts to get interesting. Now we finally reach kind of similar to our 6th round pick with Kadarius Toney, where we got into the 6th round. We kind of knew there wasn't a running back there we wanted. We had just taken Justin Fields, so we didn't want one of the quarterbacks, and we were past, right, the Kittle, Hawkinson, Andrews, Pitts area of tight end, and it was a little too early still for Goddard and Waller. So we were really locked into a wide receiver. I don't want to say we were 100% locked into to a running back here in the 10th round, But we had all pretty much been talking, this is probably the running back zone for us. There's a lot of running backs we like here. They're probably the best picks on the board. But I personally didn't really have super strong conviction about any of them. So I'd love to hear amongst, let me double check here. P. Ryan available, right? Silas, remind me if the Washington guys, B-Rob, Brian Robinson was available. I don't know if Gibson was.
Gibson and Charbonnet were not available.
Okay. So P. Ryan, Brian Robinson, AJ Dillon, Devin A. Chain available. Some of my guys, Rashad Penny, Damian Harris, Eli Mitchell, those guys all on the board here. And I think you can make a strong case for a lot of these guys. So B. Kurt, who at the running back position, since we're pretty locked into running back here, who was standing out for you the most?
So in this range, I was looking at AJ Dillon the most. We had a good discussion on him. My really kind of case that I thought AJ Dillon was probably the best for our team is, well, he's going to get work from day one. We have an anchor RB with a running back coming back from ACL. So maybe if Brees is a little bit, I expect Brees to play week one, but like maybe they work him in slow, first few weeks. Well, we get AJ Dillon. He's going to have a role day one for sure on the Packers. I don't think anyone would debate us on that. But then there's also some other things working for AJ Dillon that I don't think are factored into his ADP. He has a much better offensive line than many of the other people around here. I don't pretend like I'm an offensive line guru, but I read people's articles who say they are. And the Packers have a top 5 to 10 offensive line. Somebody like Brian Robinson, the Miami offensive line, those are a bit further down the row for me, probably like bottom 10. So we got a difference in offensive line. I also have the contingent value if Aaron Jones had something happen. And shout out Pat Crane and his legendary upside article about small sample size players. We mentioned it when we talked about Brees a little while back, but AJ Dillon actually had a really good success rate last year. He's like top 5 in success rate in the small sample size. There's a lot of good things going for AJ Dillon. Like, I don't even see the name Jamal Williams when I look at this list.
No.
Like, it's just not there. AJ Dillon stands out, especially over Brian Robinson. I'm not really a P. Ryan guy. I think that eventually where we think the money matters is going to Javonte. So that's where I go. I did put a note out to you guys, though, like, hey, if we want to get spicy, Rashad Penny's here. I might have the largest Rashad Penny bags on the planet, even bigger than Eric's.
That's
so
what
I
it's
would have
tough
been
to
all right with
do.
it.
For anyone that knows me, it's tough to get the bags bigger. So there's definitely some penny standing going on around here. Trev, what were you kind of thinking in this running back tier?
I was between Pirine and Dillon, just kind of that built-in, they can, get in the flex or RB2 early. I guess not our flex. Our flex is going to be a receiver, but they can be an RB2 early in the season, like while we're waiting for Brees to heat up or some handcuffs to go off. And I think Dillon has this bias, like a lot of college players, because it's not that he couldn't catch passes, he just didn't.
100%.
It was at Boston College, I think, and he doesn't have hands made of concrete. He's probably a better pass catcher than ETN. Just off the top of my head, ETN just looks scared out there sometimes. So I think the fact that if Aaron Jones goes down, their receiver core is a lot of question marks. So he could just go out there and catch some passes on third down, and he'll get goal line work. They have a good O-line, and Jordan Love could be decent. The whole Packers offense is just really weird because we don't know a lot. So I think he's kind of that, we know he's going to have some role. He's going to be getting some carries. He's going to have some goal line work. How much is it going to be? Who knows? But it's a solid bet compared to, I don't know, Jamal Williams, which is whatever,
And on that, we're paying a little bit of a premium because Jamal scored 1 million touchdowns last year, whereas Dillon, we were paying a premium last year because we saw his contingent value when Aaron Jones missed, and it didn't come to fruition last year. And I understand now he has Jordan Love and not Aaron Rodgers, so that matters. But now we're getting him, double-digit rounds. and Jamal Williams was a 17th round pick or 16th round pick, rose a little bit. And it's like, AJ Dillon is still like multiple rounds better to me than Jamal Williams, particularly now in an offense with Taysom, Kamara, Kendre, right? It's a very different situation for Jamal. So just to kind of compare the two. Silas, what were you thinking about this range?
Yeah, I just kind of want to touch on Dillon for a second. I mean, we're looking at the Packers offense as if it's going to enact the exact same way, right? There's a pretty major change in a change from Rodgers to Love. Aaron Jones runs past, like he runs routes. They use him in wheel routes. Like they like to kind of get creative in mismatches. But what if they want their running back position to stay in a little bit more and help actually with the protection, as it takes Jordan Love a little bit longer to digest? They might be using AJ Dillon in that role, where he might be able to leak out and be kind of used as that check down after he gives help. There's that potential as well. My preference here was Devin Achane. I touched on it in the fact of I think he has the highest ceiling out of everyone here. Where there's definitely some concerns with Dalvin Cook, signing in Miami and then kind of using him as the main guy. We know that Mike McDaniel is very intricate in how he uses his running backs. They pretty much flourish whenever they're actually on the field. He's a home run hitter at Texas A&M. Like he was one of my favorite prospects coming out of Texas A&M. The guy can absolutely fly. He has a knack for long runs in an offense that uses the stretch concept. He might actually flourish in Mike McDaniel's offense. Like he's literally the perfect dream fit. He's super fast. He's literally a younger version of Raheem Mostert, who we saw at the beginning of last year, like blow up in fantasy. Obviously, there's concerns because they brought back both Mostert and Wilson, but they also drafted Achane on day 2. Like they invested in this guy and they want him to be a pretty major part of the offense. We have Tua, we have Tyreek. He kind of correlates in that regard. It just kind of felt like a pretty easy fit for me.
Yeah, I do think he's definitely in play. But as we started to talk it through, and we talked about this on the Bulldog video as well, which apparently I've become an AJ Dillon stan from talking to all you guys a bunch. But Rob was also pounding the table for AJ Dillon, and it did make me kind of think a little bit more, look back a little bit more, and kind of piggybacking on some of the stuff that Silas was just saying. Setting aside AJ Dillon's projection talent, all that kind of stuff, what he's done historically, I think that the Packers are one of the most wildly unknown things about this fantasy football season. Both in, is Jordan Love good enough to make them a competent offense? Is Christian Watson really a number one, right? Jaden Reed, blah, blah. What does their kind of skill group look like? But Aaron Jones is getting a little bit older, and he's kind of he's never really been like that workhorse kind of back. He's a weapon, if you will. He can run, and he's an explosive runner, but he's best used kind of as a weapon, a little bit Alvin Kamara-esque. He's a little bit more like a Kamara archetype than he's certainly not a Najee archetype. But if there is that kind of an archetype on an offense with all this uncertainty, where I can't imagine, and he's not that young, Jordan Love, anymore. He's been in the league for a few years. But if there was a way to mitigate some of the risk of Jordan Love in his first season, maybe he's not even particularly great, I can think of one guy who's a pretty good way to mitigate that risk, and that's old Quads. That's just going to be a bruiser up the middle, right? You can churn out, move the chains with this kind of a guy and expand his role. He's much younger than Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is not going to be around on this team for all that much longer. I think we could start to see it's not a comp in terms of stylistically, but as we started to see Tony Pollard creep into Zeke's role, I think we could start to see AJ Dillon become a little bit more of the face of the offense this season as they transition into Jordan Love as well. So I think we're viewing it like Aaron Jones is, the lead guy, and AJ Dillon is kind of the backup. And I think it's definitely much more 50-50. Aaron Jones is going to naturally, get more targets when he's healthy. Aaron Jones has also missed time before, and he's a little bit older, and he's a smaller back. AJ Dillon 2 years ago, now again, last year it didn't come to fruition, and that's why he was a little overdrafted last year. 2 years ago, to Trev's point earlier about his ability to catch the ball and, receive targets and play in the passing game, it was just he didn't do it in college, as opposed to he can't do it. 2 games where Aaron Jones missed the first one, and then Aaron Jones came back, but was not really thrust all the way back into a full-time role. It was I should have had this up, week 12 in 2021. They're actually playing the Packers-Vikings. AJ Dillon plays basically every snap at running back, third downs, short yardage, which he always plays short yardage, right? But gets 6 targets in that game. He was by the way, they only threw 33 passes. He had 6 targets. Only Devontae Adams had more targets than AJ Dillon did in that game. Aaron Jones comes back the next week. AJ Dillon, in a positive game script, an actual shootout against the Rams, AJ Dillon gets 20 carries and 5 targets in that game. Aaron Jones played and had 1 target and 10 carries. And so if they're certainly comfortable leaning a little bit more heavily on AJ Dillon, if we see any sort of a downtick in Aaron Jones, I think this could be the guy that people are drafting Samaje Perine for, but with like actual crazy upside, because he's the younger back that can grow into this workhorse and certainly has the contingent value. He feels to me like a different version of Pollard or Madison or whatever, a better player than Madison, but like that contingent value where he's just a stone cold. I mean, where would we, if Aaron Jones wasn't a thing, he got cut or hurt, AJ Dillon's a second round. Why is he different than, Tony Pollard and all of those guys? He's not much than Jacobs, right? Jacobs, Ramondre, those guys are second, third round picks. I don't see why he's any different. He just has grown and grown and grown on me, particularly in this range. We need a running back. B. Kurt mentioned he kind of gives us some early season standalone value, but he also gives us some massive contingent value and just uncertainty value. Who knows what this backfield really looks like? Who knows what this offense looks like? So as we talked it through, he was the guy who really just started to stand out to me. I do like a lot of these other guys, but like A-Chain has upside, like a lot of upside in he's a home run hitter and this offense looks great. I don't think there's ever a path where A-Chain is playing every snap. You're counting on home runs. He may never even get the goal line work because he's like 185 pounds. AJ Dillon has we're drafting this guy in the second round next year upside to me. And I don't think anybody else does in this range. So that's ultimately kind of what decided it for me. Anything else that we want to add on this group? And then looking ahead, another reason why I think AJ Dillon made a lot of sense is some of these other guys might get back, right? The further you scroll down this list, AJ Dillon has an ADP of 107. I love Rashad Penny. I love Damian Harris. I even have Khalil Herbert and A-Chain. I like those guys. They're at least around less expensive ADP than AJ Dillon does. So any final thoughts on this pick that we did make with Dillon? And then what are you thinking about kind of the next group and our next pick?
So that really came into that kind of final bit of the AJ Dillon solidification was what you're talking about right there, Eric, is we've seen Tyreek fall. We've seen Tua now fall 20 picks as ADP. Well, if we're split kind of between AJ Dillon and A-Chain can we get we're at pick 113. He's ADP 120. So that's only like a 7-8 spot fall for A-Chain to get back to us. So, that's kind of where we're hoping that maybe that happens. And then we can get him before that other tier. Because it's kind of like a couple mini tiers in here. Like, we still got a pretty good shot at getting A-Chain on this squad.
Trev?
Yeah, I'm looking at, I would have, if we had Sutton available at that pick where we took Dillon, I probably would have made the argument that he's kind of that last guy who could potentially be up with the Ravens guys. It's a weird outlook on him. We don't know how the Broncos are going to be. They brought in Mims, but with him gone, I think wide receivers wiped out for a little bit, and there's not much of a difference in the guys that will be coming up versus in the next round or two. So I'm definitely looking at any fallers in that running back group just coming back to us, and we can really bolster just our running back position because everything else feels super flat, and we don't need quarterback at all. So those are really the guys I'm just looking to target.
Silas?
Yeah, so Bernie actually made that argument to us, in Discord. So we already made these picks. And, kind of made me think about it a little bit further where, I think I was playing with scared money. We'd already drafted AJ Dillon in the Bulldog, and being, invested in him in 2 high stakes teams was like, I don't know, kind of was making me subjectively lean towards someone else when AJ Dillon's pretty much the snap pick. Like, you think about it holistically rather than through your portfolio lens. Like, for this team, AJ Dillon makes way too much sense. A-Chain was more of an upside swing, right? Like, obviously we're trying to play for $1 million, but I was kind of talking myself out of Dillon because, we already had a lot of money invested. So just something to think about for anybody else drafting out there.
And to be fair, right? Like, there is an element of managing your portfolio to everyone's best ball strategy, right? You can't, I don't want to say you can't, everyone can do whatever the hell they want. You can draft 100% of a player, but if you are drafting in volume and you are drafting, so maybe you're drafting a bunch of $5 and $10 tournaments, but only, you do get into a couple of the higher stakes ones. It is totally up to you. Do you want to draft, right? AJ Dillon may be the best player for this team, but you may not want to have him on every, right? You don't want to go down all your high stakes teams with one guy. That's up to each person, to do that. It helps a little bit because we have 4 people with all the teams, right? It makes it a little bit different, but I do think it's an important element to call out. So I'm actually glad that you did. I would not call it playing scared, but I would say that it's important to assess that. Do you actually really prefer Devin A-Chain to AJ Dillon? Are you doing it because you want to diversify, or is it like your subconscious seeping in and saying, well, we took Dillon last time, I'm just naturally looking for something else? And none of those are necessarily wrong, but just understanding that when you're trying to make the pick, I think, is important. So really quickly, we're going to run down the team before we sign off through 10 rounds. We are halfway through this draft, and I think B. Kurt mentioned it before. I don't know how it could go much better. Maybe the pick where we took Tony could have been someone else, but I don't know if that's the worst thing that happens to us in this draft. I think we're pretty goddamn blessed here. But through 10 rounds, we're just going to start and read all the positions. Justin Fields at quarterback, Breece Hall and AJ Dillon as our 2 running backs thus far. Tyreek Hill, Garrett Wilson, Deebo Samuel, Darren Waller, Kadarius Toney, Jahan Dotson, and Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, particularly and that's just reading the names. That didn't talk about every single guy is after ADP. Tua 2 rounds after ADP. Fields a round after ADP. Doesn't get much better. So I am pretty excited to see how this one goes. We'll be back again in this is the fastest moving. This is not even a slow draft. I don't know what you call this. Is a medium draft. It's not fast. It's not slow. This is a brisk walk, a speed walk for this draft. But we'll be back in another day or so to make our 11th and 12th round picks. And I promise we'll be getting into more debate similar to the AJ Dillon debate in future videos, because not every pick's going to be quite as big of a slam dunk as it has been thus now. Make sure to turn notifications on so you can catch all these videos as they get uploaded, and we'll see you guys in round 11.
Woo! Those were some spicy takes. Want to stay up to date with all of the other spicy takes we're going to have over here at Spike Week? Why don't you press that subscribe button below? You turn notifications on, we draft a team, boom, you know about it. We have another spicy take, boom, you know about it. You can be there, you can draft with us. You want to stay up to date? That's how you do it. All right, we'll catch you later next time here at Spike Week.